welcome to Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analysts. That's namely me, Rory Duncan.
And me, Christina Richmond. This podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market, industry trends, and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations today. How are you, Rory? What's going on over there in Edinburgh?
Well, it's pretty much dark now. It's a Friday afternoon and it is dark and it has been raining. So,
oh dear.
That's basically it. I am still struggling, kind of trying to stay awake, but I think it's just been another busy week. And as we get closer to Christmas here, we all get a little bit fatigued and zooming around buying presents and things.
Indeed.
So, and you, how are you?
But I think also the dark. And I was going to say, I'm tired as well. I think it's the dark. Being up here in the northern latitude, which you are and I am, we don't have as much daylight. It's dark and dreary. That just gets a little fatiguing. People want to curl up and go to bed at 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
But I'm well. I'm
Right.
good. I'm not really that festive. I'm trying, but I'm not really that festive. But we'll give it a go.
Oh, well. Well, in the absence of overt festivity, what are we going to be doing in this episode, Christina?
Yeah, this is festive for us. We really enjoy recording the podcast. We hope you enjoy listening. This will be part 2 of our year in review, the 2025 year in review. We will be looking at the heroes of the year and the zeros of the year. We're not calling out individual names or companies for the zeros, but we do have some zeros, very much so. And then there's some sort of meh or ho-hum that we will talk about. So really, it's just us blathering on for this podcast, no guest, but we felt it necessary to complete the year in review and to give people a sense of what was 2025 all about.
Yes, indeed. And on that note, last week we talked about Q1 and Q2, some of the merger and acquisition activity and so on of the year, and some of the AI aspects that we covered during the year. But if we look at one of the key topics in the third quarter of last year, and we looked a lot at geopolitical tensions and some of the ideas behind foundational security. So clearly it's been a tough year. If you look at some of the commentators when it comes to geopolitics and so on, Carol bought me a copy of the Economist's Look Ahead at 2026. It's a great magazine. It's got probably about 50 or 60 just some short snippets on different topics. And, this was something that had the geopolitical aspect kind of went through the whole thing. And their view was, well, we're never going to escape from that. It's just going to be perhaps a bit different next year, as in 2026. But it's kind of always been a feature, whether it's, wars or whether it's trade tensions or something, it will kind of always be there. But I think one of the things that we found was the threat of burnout has never been less. And that's something that the human toll we pointed out, kind of connecting with the human aspect that we mentioned last week in terms of the importance of having the human in the loop when it comes to AI. But there's more and more pressure. And I think a lot of that pressure is coming from many of the new types of attacks and the kind of, the geopolitical battleground that we see. So international cyber conflict, where we have, nation states becoming more involved, this move towards, high stakes, state-sponsored campaigns, and then the response to that doesn't necessarily help the stressed out CISO if they've got that in addition to the everyday ransomware and phishing and so on that goes on. When it gets at that level, it becomes very serious.
Well, and the drip is increasing, the Chinese water torture drip. And I think of the poor CISO, sitting in a water torture chamber with the drip on him or her. And the drip is increasing, frequency, intensity, quantity. And yes, AI is defensively giving us some tools that we like to say will help the CISO. But in all fairness, right now, it's a bit of the Wild West. It's still such a young time in AI. And it's being used offensively to the same degree, if not more so. So we're always playing catch up. So yeah, the human toll of CISO burnout is pretty massive. And that human element under pressure, as you say, I think is a huge thing. We had a chat with Damian Archer from TrustWave and then again with Harold Moss. And we were talking about the skills gap and debating whether there really is a skills gap. We companies want to hire the graybeards.
Yeah.
And they're in short supply and a lot of them are trying to retire. And the youngins need help. Now, maybe some of the LLM and agentic AI tools will help the tier 1 and tier 2 youngins, both in terms of taking some of their workload, but also in training them. But so is there a real skills gap? I don't know. But that human element is a huge thing. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. We also saw, how on the opposite end, well, not the opposite end, but on the kind of offensive side, how many of the threat actors were, engaging in strategic partnerships with each other. And I think you've mentioned this before, Christina, how, we've got cyber criminals becoming much more organized, having HR departments and, holiday things.
401k.
Yeah, all of that stuff. And then having partnerships with each other as you would do in the corporate world. But that's right. That's become something. In other words, they are providing services to each other, therefore allowing many of these threat actors to kind of scale up the range of activities that they do because they are outsourcing some of the bad actions to others. Which,
that's right.
Which is
buying tools on the marketplace, the black marketplace. Yeah. But to defend against that, I mean, we have all these sort of new startups and shiny objects, but really the basics, the fundamentals, is something we heard a lot about this year, right?
Yeah. We did. I know a friend of the show, TK Chianini, the CTO at DNS Filter. He was on in episode 39. He made a very compelling case for shifting from, for example, basic resolving DNS to protective DNS. So he argued that it is one of the few controls with massive scale and efficacy that happens, before anything else can happen. So comparing the shift to the historical move from insecure telnet to secure SSH. Now, his point was that it's often overlooked. And I remember you saying, you actually asked TK, hey, how does it feel moving into this, a subject that's been around for 20, 30, 40 years, right? Since the beginning of the internet. And he was like, no, it's great. It's still real important and very relevant for these reasons, which is a fundamental, aspect of the frontline defense, right?
And I loved talking with Eric Block, who's the VP of security over at Illumio. And that was episode 24. And he was like, we're obsessed with shiny objects and it comes at the expense of mastering the basics. And he drove that point home with such a powerful analogy. He was talking about, the security industry and comparing it to the pharmaceutical industry, where there's far more money to be made in selling Band-Aids than actually going after the root cause of a problem. So basics and fundamentals and hygiene. I mean, and then when I think back to the conversation in episode 30 with Mark Hughes, where he was talking about the boring bits, quote unquote, and how if we can get agents to do a lot of those boring bits, whether it's helping us with configuration right at the outset or patching after the fact to make sure that we're keeping on top of the CVEs that are being announced, I mean, that would take us a long way, wouldn't it? It would get us a long way down the journey towards some better security. It's not going to get us all the way, but it's going to help quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And that was a theme that came through for the whole year and is likely to continue for next year. The number of times that we talked about that was quite significant. So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And then in fourth quarter, we've been seeing the heating up of platformification or platformization for several years now, right? But the platform wars just heated up even more. We saw Palo Alto acquire CyberArk, right? So that was to put a plug in the hole they had in their identity strategy in Palo's portfolio. So that deal provided them great capabilities in machine identity management and IGA, Identity Governance and Administration.
Mm-hmm.
CyberArk itself had also acquired Venafi and Zilla Security. So, it's interesting they had such a drop in their stock, though, after that acquisition. What do you think about that, Rory?
Well, that's the strange thing about the stock market, isn't it? Is that it's all a big gamble, it's a big bet, and it's all about expectations versus reality. And in many ways, when companies buy other companies, or the reasons they do it for, perhaps more is expected of it at the time, but there's also speculative development. Apple is the same. Whenever Apple makes any announcement, even if it does a record-breaking quarter, of which it regularly does, the stock price always goes down initially, but then goes zooming up afterwards. So there is a bit of trading that goes on and a bit of speculation. Some people would say, some unkind people might say, oh, well, because it wasn't clearly an AI acquisition, which is unfair because of course there's a large part of that. But, maybe if it had AI in the name or was more obviously done for AI reasons, then
right.
Well, exactly. Give it, and that's purely because listeners, I'm not being too sarcastic about it, but yeah, that's where all the money's being thrown just now.
Well, it's true. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, Palo's been on this acquisition spree, right? Like, what did you tell me the other day? 7 or something since 2019 or some crazy number.
14, I think they're on their 15th now. Yeah.
But Level Blue is also on an acquisition spree, but they're private. So they don't get that stock pendulum swing that Palo is going through, right? So Level Blue, they're young. They came out of the gate, 18 months ago.
Yeah, it was in May 2024.
Yeah, and so they're still quite young, but they have money burning a hole in the pocket somewhere because they have made several acquisitions. So M&A was a big thing, and we talked about this already, but it was also big in the platform arena because, as we mentioned with Google and Wiz, that was also a platform play.
Yeah, that's right. The M&A discussion we had last week, I touched on a lot of this, but I think to your point, this is about the platform, right? It's not necessarily about buying products. This is about building out their platform, staking their claim to say, hey, we have a full portfolio of services, or we have a full portfolio of solutions for industry or whatever. The more you have, the more that you can offer to your existing customers, and or you can upsell across the way. So there is that. The last one on here, which was looking at the kind of platform end game, was a smaller scale, but Sentinel-1 acquiring Prompt Security and then Calypso AI. And
good for them. They get high marks for having the AI in their acquisition.
Yes, indeed. And if this was one of the kind of buzzwords or buzz phrases at the moment, in the same way with cloud, it was, cloud native platforms. And this is now, looking at AI native platforms for security. So this is very much designed to be a kind of an AI move. In other words, integrating AI security, posture management, and model security directly into its own Singularity platform. So the positioning of that was as expected, and to your point, it was a really good move. It was an astute move to integrate the AI capabilities within the platform itself, and that's how the market saw it.
Yeah, no, and I hear the exhaustion of just even talking about all of this M&A and the platform wars that we're seeing. And it's sometimes exhausting to watch the tennis match between all of these companies, but it's also fascinating. But one thing that kind of lights my light, in a way, that is new, different. We analysts get bored easily, and so having something new to chew on is always fun, for me anyway. And it's preparing for the quantum era. Now, okay, folks, I know it's not here yet. We talked a lot about building the bunker. I think it was last week that we were talking about building the bunker for quantum, or was that the predictions episode? That was the predictions episode. But I do think it's a real thing. So this, HNDL is the acronym for the sort of attack scenario that is harvest now. So through ransomware, harvest your data now and decrypt it later, right? This is something that is real. Mm-hmm. And we are seeing lots of threat reports are talking about this. In fact, HPI, when I was with them in December, they talked about HNDL. Mm-hmm. So people are putting wood behind the arrow for PQC, for the post-quantum cryptography. IBM is, HPI is, others are that I've talked with and you've talked with. And there's beyond being ready for the quantum era, beyond being ready for it, there is just kind of again, hygiene opportunity. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's this need for crypto agility. I mean, RSA has been around, the algorithm has been around 50 years, 40 years. Yeah. I'm taking a stab in the dark on that one. But we have to shift away from static cryptography. We have to build this agility where we have a continuous posture management approach. And we're upgrading our encryption standards as they evolve, even if it doesn't mean re-architecting our entire architecture or infrastructure right now. Mm-hmm. It's just doing a refresh on the encryption models we have. But while we're at it, folks, I think we do need to also join the fray and look at services to become more crypto ready for the quantum era.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last point on that one of our guests made was that he used the analogy with the Y2K bug, something
That's right.
The impending arrival of and for those of you who are too young to remember that, hopefully some of you on here are young enough to remember it. But this was basically the fact that as we changed to the year 2000, having built date and time markers on our operating systems on 119 and then something, moving to 2000 was supposed to kind of break everything. Everything would stop. The world would end. And it didn't, because that involved, like this, there was preparation, there was planning, there was infrastructure-wide challenges. They looked at, inventory discovery and so on across the way. And it also affected things that really had nothing to do with Y2K itself.
I mean, it is time to do the fundamentals in cleaning up encryption, in becoming agile around your cryptography. It is the time to look at, are you ready for PQC? Have you looked at all of your systems? I do think that quantum is going to be an interesting one. Will it break TLS this next year? No. I don't think so. We might eat our hats, our chocolate hats, as we said in our prediction episode, but it is time to start preparing and getting ready for it.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, what I'm looking forward to next is the heroes of the year. Do you feel like we've tied off the year in review?
Yeah,
Rory, what do you say?
I think so.
Yeah. So who do you think is the number one hero of the year for Richmond Advisory Group? Or are there two?
I think there's probably more than one or two, but I've picked out a couple, and I'm sure you've got some views on this, Christina.
Oh, yeah.
And the first hero of the year for me would be OWASP for all its great work. Now, this is not the first year that OWASP, I think, deserves our award, but it's the first time we've offered it, so there you go. All the great work that they've done during the year, tireless activities they've been up to, the professionalism, particularly during this year, the work on the Agentic AI SecOps Framework and Market Landscape report, which is a bit of a mouthful, but I think even at the time, it must have been a real challenge, given how rapidly that part of the market is developing.
New.
Yeah.
It was so new when they were working on it. Yeah.
And, a herding cats comes to mind in terms of how on earth they managed to make sense of all that as the market was developing. It also, but didn't stop there. There was the AI security solutions landscape for agentic AI that they did as well in Q3. All of that kind of mapping it out, doing these graphical segmentation of the market, looking at vendors, looking at solutions. And some would argue, well, it's developing so quickly, it'll be out of date quite soon. You have to kind of put a stake in the ground somewhere.
You do.
Otherwise, it's just a complete mess.
Yeah, and to that point, they just came out a week or so ago, December 9th, they came out with the top 10 for agentic applications. So they just keep on keeping on. And one of the people that I'd like to call out as a hero in this effort, and I know there are many, and he would be very modest and say that it's not just him, which is true, it's not just him, but he does further this discussion. He does talk about it and write about it, and he works with the OWASP team. So a friend of the show, Rock Lambros of Rock Cyber, he has done a lot in this area. And I just want to give him a shout out and say he, to me, is one of the heroes of the year. First and foremost, OWASP, but also all of the people working with OWASP, and then a special shout out to Rock.
Yeah, Rob, you'd absolutely deserve that, and great. And I know that you would probably say, "Oh, no, it's a team effort, and it's about the entire OWASP team." Yeah, for sure. But you came on the show and explained it to us, and we like you very much, and think you're doing great work. So that's why we're calling you out and not anybody else. So there you go.
Right. Now we have revealed the true nature of this very objective award.
That's right. Very objective. Exactly. Others are available if they would like to come and state their case to be a hero, but Brock, you're a hero. So there you go.
Brilliant. So do we have a second hero of the year, do you think?
Yes. So this is, well, maybe slightly more controversial. It involves politics. But I would say in a beneficial way, whenever you talk about government initiatives, it can quickly become a bit of a bun fight when it comes to the pros and cons. And
a bun fight or a bum fight?
No, not a bum fight. That's something different. A bun fight. I'll maybe have to explain that to you. A bun fight. It's just people throwing stuff around at each other.
Oh, I see. Like kind of a food fight, you mean?
Yeah, kind of like a food fight. Like that scene in, what was the Bugsy Malone? Remember at the end of Bugsy Malone? And they have this massive food fight, which is kind of iconic. Anywho, I would say that the current UK government, for introducing the Cybersecurity and Resiliency Bill to Parliament.
Yes.
And they've had the first reading done. Now, yes. Okay, we'll take the criticism. So yes, it's legislation, and it's at a federal and a government level. Now, I know that does trigger some people. Fair enough. Some people, that would be too much big government. Others, perhaps it's long overdue. And it is part of a regulatory environment, which also triggers people. But I think there's no doubt that unlike perhaps other laws which are motivated by, let's say, political ambitions or are contentious, this is all about strengthening cyber defenses specifically for essential public services. So healthcare, drinking water providers, transport, energy. Now, regardless of your political beliefs or slants, this stuff is really important. Part of the reason behind it was this kind of acceleration in what we've seen in Europe. Let's look at Ukraine, for example, where aggressors are not afraid to attack civilian infrastructure. That is critical for the survival of everybody, men, women, and children on all sides, regardless of their politics. So that's really important. It's, for me, then, they're a hero because it's not contentious. And I do know that this bill is cross-party, so it has bipartisan support. The bill looks at medium and large companies providing services like IT management, IT help desk support, and cybersecurity to private and public sector organizations like the NHS. They're going to be regulated for the first time. But this is because they hold trusted access across government, critical national infrastructure, and business networks. So it means, reporting mechanisms. It means accounting for themselves. They have to have robust plans in place to deal with the consequences, etc., etc. Now, we know some of this should have already existed. Some of it may exist in other forms elsewhere. But here's the thing. I think it's a really good start. Unfortunately, having accelerated due to the actions of some certain other countries in other parts of the world.
Well, and that leads us to the zeros of the year.
It does.
Quite a good segue, actually. And I have the sad job of talking about, the zeros of the year, because sadly, what we have seen this year in the US is a significant shift and setting a tone of uncertainty, both around cybersecurity and around the development of AI. So earlier in the year, gosh, it was like our second or third episode, we talked about the implications of our new administration here in the US, its decision to dismiss many members of the Cyber Safety Review Board, the CSRB. There were serious concerns about continuity and stability, especially around Salt Typhoon. Now, I do know that investigation did continue forward. I don't know how well, but I will say that it is carrying forward. But I also have seen a lot of folks either dismissed or folks who have left CISA or the Department of Homeland Security. And so it leads to this, again, this lack of continuity, this lack of understanding of the seriousness, honestly, in the U.S. The seriousness, the danger to our critical infrastructure, just as the UK is building up some of their resilience, I feel like the US has taken its eye off the ball. And most recently, and this is also very concerning to me, is the continued lack of framework or regulatory control or any putting one's arms around AI development. So December 11th, the White House issued an executive order called Ensuring a National Policy Framework for Artificial Intelligence. It sounds good. Sounds like it's on the right path, but what it does is undermine all of the state laws that have been under development, being built on behalf of trying to find some control, some safety, reduction of vulnerabilities in the development of AI. And so it directs, this executive order directs the attorneys general across all of the states to cease and desist and to roll things up into federal review. It's directing all executive departments and federal agencies to evaluate discretionary grant programs, to condition them on states that are either not enacting an AI law or they're entering into a binding agreement with the relevant agent not to enforce such laws. It just is very concerning to me. The worry here is that it's creating confusion.
Right.
You know, I think the U.S. it's creating a paradox. It's saying, hey, look, we're not going to increase regulatory control. We're going to allow free development, unfettered development of AI for economic reasons, to keep us front and center, to make us number one. But what's happening is it's creating regulatory uncertainty. Right. And also it's creating a compliance vacuum, which is making folks feel that they can go on holiday from compliance activities. Not the case, folks. Don't take your eye off of this ball. And there's some great recommendations that our hero of the year, one of them, Rock, has put in a terrific post on LinkedIn. So look for that post of his with practical recommendations. And he says, look, don't take your eye off. Inventory all your existing AI governance controls. Map them to both the current state requirements and the emerging federal guidance. So we're just creating more work for GRC people. Also, document your business rationales for governance decisions, independent of what is coming or not coming in terms of regulatory compliance. And then establish monitoring processes. Keep your eye on the ball of these executive orders. Engage legal counsel. Those organizations operating in Colorado, Texas, California, and other states with AI-specific laws need jurisdiction by jurisdiction analysis of how federal this executive order might preempt their efforts and affect their obligations. It's made things messier, Rory. I'm very concerned about it. I think it's a big fat zero. Sorry, I'm being very opinionated.
No, I think that's fine. I think opinions are absolutely fine, and it's something that people ask us for. It's always tricky when you have, changes in administration where strategically the objectives are seemingly different from what has gone before or what perhaps makes sense from a common sense perspective. And I think for something like cybersecurity, it's a very, very sensitive topic, particularly when it comes to who controls what and who sets the agenda in terms of regulations or not. It's kind of the same in the UK in many ways, so I don't think the US is much different. But it is one of these areas that, regardless of your political slant or your views on things, where possible, it really needs to be bipartisan or tripartisan, depending on how many parties you've got involved, because it affects the criticality of all of the services
that we depend on, all of the day-to-day
everything,
life-giving, life-supporting services. Yeah,
all of these things have,
agree.
and so that's a tricky one. But folks, we will continue to monitor that, and in coming episodes, we'll report back on how things are going and how we see things.
And I think, I got kind of hot and bothered about that. And I do think sometimes we do have to be opinionated. But now to a more universal topic of ho-hum or meh things that happened this year. The big one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, outline it, because I think this is the absolute zero of the year.
The absolute, and you suffered from it. So yes, 100%, you go.
So this was in June of this year, and I had gone to a show in the UK and came back from said show not feeling great. And then I was floored. Literally for a month, I was feeling so bad. But for 2 weeks at least, it was bedbound. And that was the flu. So the zero of the year was, whatever that was, in conjunction with any trade show that happened in 2025. It was interesting because I was kind of feeling sorry for myself, thinking, well, as an older gentleman and, susceptible to these things. Afterwards, I talked to a number of the youngsters that were at the show, the mid 20-year-olds, early 30-year-olds, somethings who were manning the booths and so on. No, they all had it as well. So
they did.
Back to the dangers of the trade show diseases, folks. We had it light during the lockdown when we didn't really go to shows, but now that everybody's going to shows again, whoosh, all of the germs and diseases are going around. Yeah. So that was a low point for me during the year.
Oh, terrible, terrible, terrible. And we do pick things up at shows. So boost your immune systems, do the basic fundamentals, the hygiene that we've talked about for cybersecurity. Do it for your own organism, please. On that note, we've covered a lot. We'd love to remind folks to sign up for our newsletter. It's free. It's called Signal Not Noise. You can go to our website, richmondadvisorygroup.com, and just put your name in. It's pretty quick and easy. You have to attest to the fact that, yes, you are opting in after you put in your email. That's it. And how else should they be in touch, Rory, if they'd like?
Well, you can get hold of us through email. So that would be Rory at richmondadvisorygroup.com.
Or Christina at richmondadvisorygroup.com.
And with that, we would like to thank everybody for listening during the year.
And for a great year. Yeah, thanks for being loyal listeners and for tuning in. And we hope to bring you lots more insights next year.
Exactly. And we wish you a very happy festive season, or best wishes for the holidays, or however you celebrate it, and whichever deity you choose to involve or not. Choices are available.
Yes, pagan rites, any rites, or no rites. And so we wish you an excellent holiday season. Thanks so much for tuning in.
And we look forward to talking with you guys again in the new year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.